We were in the trading room and everybody was analyzing numbers, talking to their clients. We were settled into the day, and back to the right there was a loud explosion. And then we looked to the right and just saw a huge fireball sucking in on itself, and thousands of pieces of paper just billowing outside the trade center. We ran over to see what had gone on, and there was a huge gaping hole in the side of the building, and people in the windows. And some people were doing the unthinkable. The heat was so intense that they decided to jump. I was born in Hamilton, Ontario, in between Toronto and Niagara Falls.
So born a Canadian, and eventually you moved to New York City for work, correct?
I did. I moved down in 2000, the year 2000, and brought my wife and kids as well.
And which company were you working for?
I worked for a company called Eurobrokers MaxCore. I was a money market broker. I used to trade US dollar and European currency.
And so, just like everybody else, on the morning of September 11th, what kind of day were you anticipating before everything happened?
Anticipating? I loved the energy of the city. I would get on the train at 5:42 in the morning and take the train from my town down into Hoboken and then take the PATH train into the city. And just the energy from getting off the train, getting onto the PATH train and running into the World Trade Center. It was energizing.
And so you got the 5:42. What time were you at work?
Probably around 6:40, 6:50.
Okay. So you were at work a couple of hours already.
Yeah, you had to get in early just because it's 24-hour markets. So Tokyo was closing their markets, the Asian markets were closing, London and Europe was halfway through their day, and we were just starting our day. So.
Did you ever have any misgivings about working at the World Trade Center, given that there had been a bombing several years before that?
No, I was working in Toronto when the '93 bombing happened, and I guess I don't want to say clueless about it, but terrorism wasn't on my radar.
So explain what happened and what you remember as the first plane hit the other tower.
So we were in the trading room and everybody was analyzing numbers, talking to their clients, running through what had happened the evening before and what was happening in Europe with the markets. And then we were settled into the day, and back to the right there was a loud explosion. And then we looked to the right and just saw a huge fireball sucking in on itself, and thousands of pieces of paper just billowing outside the trade center. We ran over to see what had gone on, and there was a huge gaping hole in the side of the building, and people in the windows. And some people were doing the unthinkable. The heat was so intense that they decided to jump.
You saw that?
Yeah. I didn't know, when we were trying to listen to the news, they said a light aircraft had gone off course and crashed unexpectedly into the World Trade Center. And the PA system were saying the same thing, that, building 2 is secure, please go back to your desk.
Did you think about leaving at that point?
I didn't. A lot of my colleagues that were there in '93 had left, but there were no words of terrorism or anything. It was just, I went back to my desk and I was taking phone calls basically from some of my clients, friends and family as well. People were leaving the trading room, and then eventually a friend of mine up in Canada who was a trader called me and yelled at me and told me to get out of the building.
And the second plane was about 17 minutes after the first one?
Yeah, so I grabbed a colleague of mine and we were leaving the trading room when the second plane hit. So American Airlines flight hit from 78 to 80 5, and the right wing sliced right through our trading room.
So if you had stayed there a few more minutes,
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have.
would have been the end. What floor were you on?
I was on the 84th floor.
So the impact is below you. So the fire and the smoke is emanating from below you. What do you do next?
Well, we got knocked flying, and then all the ceiling tiles came down, and I picked myself up and my colleague Mike, and we cleaned ourselves off, and there were other people in the hallway, and we went towards the stairwell. The elevator banks obviously were shut down, so we went towards the stairwell and went in the stairwell. We started to go down, and I guess about 2 flights down we met this heavy-set lady being carried by 2 men, and they said, "You can't go down there, there's too much smoke and fire." At that point, we heard, I was with a few of my colleagues, we heard this cry for help, and I went with one of my colleagues to try to help this man who was trapped a floor below, and try to help him, but I was overcome with the smoke, and so I headed up, started climbing the stairs with my other colleagues.
Climbing up.
Yeah, when they said there was no way we could go down below, we started to climb, and we tried every floor, and I guess we got to about the 91st floor, and realizing that there was no exiting. All the floors are locked from the inside for security reasons, right? So at that point, I guess true panic started to set in, and I realized I just wanted to get out and see my wife and kids again. So we started to head back down, and I guess we got down to our floor, maybe a floor below, but the smoke was really thick and heavy. So people were lying down, trying to get beneath the hot, choking smoke, and we were drifting off. We were starting to go to sleep. At that point, I heard a voice, and someone calling me and telling me to come this way. For those who are God-believing may understand who that is. Others may say it was just my adrenaline-fueled synapses working overtime. But, you know, if I heard a voice like that again, I'd go towards it because it made me get up. And I went towards the flame and the fire and the thick smoke, and in a last-ditch effort for air, I pushed against the wall, and it revealed the staircase down below. So I slid down there, and then I ran through 3 flights of stairs that were on fire.
With the adrenaline running as high as it was it agonizing immediately, or was it only after you?
I didn't even feel it. I didn't even realize that I was burnt. I just, you know, ran through it and then kept running and running and running. Like I have burns on my arms and my body, but I guess I got about halfway down, and I ran into 3 firefighters that were coming up. I explained to them that I was having trouble breathing, and they just told me to go down below, and once I got there, I would get some help down below.
What happened when you got to the ground level?
So I just wanted to get out of that place, and I came out the exit facing the courtyard in between the 2 towers, and there was a security guard there, and she wouldn't let me out. She said, you know, and you look back on it, and there were bodies and debris, and there was stuff falling out of the sky. So they wouldn't let us run outside there. They made us go down underneath through the path system to get out towards the Church Street exit. As I went down one set of stairs there, I came across a colleague of mine who was walking along, and he was a sweet, jovial man. And as we were walking towards the Church Street exit, that's when we heard the loud explosion. I looked to my right, and I saw a huge fireball coming at us, and I just yelled at John to run. The building had started to implode at that point, and we ran.
Do you remember what that sounded like?
Yeah. I ran as fast as I could to try to get out, and got knocked on the head, and woke up 3 days later in the hospital.
Did you remember at that point much of what had happened, or no?
A couple of things is that I didn't know the buildings had come down. I just, you know, when our building got hit by the plane, I thought it was just a generator down below had blown up. And everybody was telling us, right? It was like the first plane that hit, it was just, you know, a light aircraft had gone off course. So when the second one hit, it's different because the world's watching now exactly what's going on. But you're watching from the outside. I was on the inside. I had no clue what had happened. And my wife didn't tell me probably for 7, 8 days.
What were the extent of your burns and other injuries?
So I got hit on the back of the head. I have a major laceration on my head here. I had burns on 60% of my body, and my contact lenses were melted to my eyes. So,
how did they deal with that?
I don't know. The optometrist or ophthalmologist peeled them off, I think, and I went through extensive testing on my eyes. And I have debris. I had debris in me for a while. So.
How long did you stay in the hospital?
I just stayed 12 days. When I realized what had happened, when my wife told me, I was quite antsy being in the city. I was at St. Vincent's Hospital right down by the Trade Center. So I was quite agitated, and I didn't want to be in the city anymore. So they brought me home, and I got home care.
And how many children did you have at this point?
We have 4 children. So.
And what ages were they?
Back then they were 10, 8, 6, and 3. So.
Wow. How had life changed for you and them as you all deal with this?
Yeah, I was kind of blank for a couple of years. Didn't really, you know, didn't want to hear noises. Didn't really pay attention to the kids. I just kind of existed, and my wife took the brunt of it all. We were not new immigrants, but we were new to the country relatively, and she had to keep the house together and keep everybody organized and keep the kids going, and it was a slow recovery for me, just mentally and physically, mentally more so. But
were you able to return to work, or how long till you were able to?
So I went back to work part-time in March, full-time in April. But when I went back full-time, it was tough on the kids because they would sit by the window wondering every night if I was coming home. And with the anthrax scares that were going on, you know, I said to my wife, you take your passport and the kids' passports. I'll take my passport into the city. And if anything should happen, you just go back to Canada with the kids. And we realized that this was no way for us to live. So
you moved back to Canada shortly.
In the end of this school year, so 2002.
Summer.
Like, we loved living in Jersey and loved it, being in the States, and we were looking to purchase a home, but that uprooted everything.
You mentioned you were kind of blank for a couple of years. What helped to bring you out of that?
I don't know. I just, probably people talking to me and just saying, some getting angry that I was blank, and rightfully so. I just didn't really care much about anything. And then, you know, others telling me that I needed to tell my story, that it was, you know, a hopeful story. And I don't know, I lost 61 colleagues, so I have survivor's guilt. Could I have gone back and got those people? If I did, I know I wouldn't be here today, but I'll carry that with me.
Obviously, the building came down very quickly after you were able to get out. At what point did someone conclude that you were probably the last person to get out? Or how did you?
Yeah, I don't know who gave me that title. I just, there were 4 people above the impact zone that got out. One was well, 2 were my colleagues, and they got out physically unscathed. And the other was the guy we were helping, Stanley. And I almost didn't get out, so I guess they presumed that I was the last man to get out before the tower collapsed.
What do you hear from other survivors or even family members of those who didn't make it that day when they hear your story?
Yeah, for the longest time I didn't want people to see me. And, you know, some of my colleagues were asking, you know, did you see my husband? Did you see my spouse? Were they frightened? Were they scared? That was a big burden. I still talk to some of my colleagues' spouses on September 11th. Every September 11th, I reach out to them. But it's kind of tough when you get out and they didn't, right? And I didn't do anything differently than they did. I was just luckier, fortunate, blessed, I don't know.
You mentioned that you talked to some of them on the anniversary of 9/11. Are there other things that you purposely do each year on that date?
I never work that day again, so I take that day for myself. Reflect and give gratitude.
What do you want people to know about what you saw that day from the inside that we couldn't possibly see?
Yeah, it was just the panic in people's eyes that day when that happened. And, you know, people across the courtyard there in One World Trade frantically gesturing for help. It was hard to see.
Have you been back to New York?
I do. I go on the anniversary I go probably yearly, but on the anniversary I go every 5th year, and spend the weekend there with my wife.
Ron, is there anything else you want to share about that day or since then?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is, I think, you know, people say, wow, look at Ron, you know, what he's gone through. I think my wife had it harder than I did. Like, I was out of it for days and weeks and months. I was blank. You know, my wife was there watching and going to funerals when my colleagues, and she was, you know, having to grieve, and she was the lucky one, but she had a big journey ahead of her. And so, I don't know, I get all the accolades, but I think it was harder on her than it was on me.